I was 16 years old when my parents stopped calling me their daughter. Not slowly, not quietly, in one sentence. You embarrassed this family. Pack your things and leave. Those words didn't sound real at first. They floated in the air like someone else's nightmare, not mine. I stood in the doorway of my childhood bedroom, my school backpack still on my shoulders, my report card folded neatly inside it. I was in 11th grade. Top of my class, college bound, and pregnant. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father's face was stone. You made your choices, he said. Now live with them. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. I wasn't asking them to celebrate. I wasn't asking them to forgive me overnight. I was asking them not to erase me. But shame is louder than love when pride rules a home. That night, I packed my life into 2 trash bags. Clothes, a notebook, 1 photo from a school competition. No hugs, no goodbye. The door closed behind me. And just like that, I was homeless, pregnant, and still a child. The first place I slept was a friend's couch. Her parents whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. How long will she stay? What about the baby? I pretended to sleep. After 3 weeks, I moved again. Then again, then again. I finished 11th grade with swollen feet and empty pockets. I studied at night with my hand on my stomach, whispering promises I didn't know how to keep. I don't know how, I told my unborn child, but I won't abandon you. Unlike what had been done to me. I worked after school, then mornings, then nights. I learned hunger. I learned fear. I learned how quickly people judge when your mistakes are visible. Teachers stopped asking about my future. Friends stopped calling. But the baby kept growing. And so did my resolve. Labor was long, painful, lonely. No parents in the waiting room. No family name whispered with pride. Just me. When they placed her in my arms, everything shifted. She was tiny, perfect, and suddenly, my life wasn't about survival anymore. It was about responsibility. I dropped out of school temporarily. I worked wherever someone would hire me. I learned how to stretch $1 into a meal. I cried in bathrooms. I smiled in public, and every night, I promised her, you will never feel unwanted. Years passed. I went back to school. Graduated late. Then college. Then more work. I studied while my daughter slept. I typed essays with one hand and rocked a crib with the other. People called me lucky. They didn't see the exhaustion. They called me strong. They didn't see the fear. But step by step, I built something real. No help. No safety net. Just grit. By my mid-30s, I owned a small business. Nothing flashy, but stable. My daughter thrived, confident, loved. She never asked about her grandparents. And I never forced the story. Because healing doesn't require reopening every wound. The letter came in the mail. Legal paper, cold language. My parents were suing me. For money, for support. After 22 years of silence. After missing every birthday, every graduation, every struggle, they wanted what I built. I stood in court calm, prepared, unashamed. The judge listened. I told the truth, not with anger, but with clarity. I had been abandoned. I had survived, and I owed them nothing. The case was dismissed. But the real victory wasn't legal. It was personal. I walked out free. She learned that mistakes don't define you. Abandonment doesn't own you, and strength can come from the darkest places. If you were rejected when you needed love the most, this story is for you. You can rise. You can build, and one day, you'll realize. They didn't ruin your life. They forced you to create your own. People love success stories. They love the ending. They love the glow up. They love the sentence, she made it. What they don't love, what they don't stay for, are the invisible years in between. Those years almost killed me. There were years I worked 3 jobs. Morning shifts cleaning offices, afternoons at a small retail store. Nights doing data entry from an old laptop that overheated every hour. I slept 4 hours a night. Sometimes less. My daughter would wake up and touch my face gently. Mommy, are you sick? I smiled. No, baby, mommy's just tired. But inside, my bones felt hollow. I was surviving, not living. People looked at me differently when they found out. She had a baby in high school. They didn't say it kindly. They said it like a verdict. Doors closed quietly. Opportunities disappeared politely. I learned how to sound confident while feeling small. How to dress professional on thrift store budgets. How to hide fear behind preparation. One night, after my daughter fell asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor. Back against the tub, lights off, bills spread around me like accusations. I put my head in my hands and whispered, I can't do this anymore. That was the most honest moment of my life. Not dramatic, not loud, just exhausted truth. And then I heard a tiny voice from the bedroom. Mom. I wiped my face and stood up. Yes, baby. She looked at me half asleep. Can you lay with me? And that was it. That was the reason I kept going. I raised my daughter with one rule. Love never disappears as punishment. She could make mistakes. She could fail. She could cry. But she would never be thrown away. Every night I told her. You are safe. You are wanted. You are loved. I was healing myself while raising her. When I was 32, someone finally saw me. A supervisor noticed my work ethic. My consistency. My refusal to quit. She offered mentorship. Not pity. Opportunity. I took night classes again. I studied harder than ever. Failure wasn't an option. I had already lost too much. My progress wasn't fast. It was quiet. Incremental raises. Better schedules. More responsibility. Years passed. And one day, I looked around and realized. I wasn't drowning anymore. I was standing. She was 17 when she finally asked. Why don't we have grandparents? I took a breath. And I told her the truth. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. Just facts. She listened silently. Then she said something I'll never forget. They don't deserve you. I cried that night. Not from pain. From relief. By 40, I wasn't the scared girl anymore. I was calm. Capable. Grounded. I had built a life with no shortcuts and no apologies. And that's when the past came knocking. The envelope didn't look dramatic. No threats. No insults. Just clean white paper with my name typed neatly on the front. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Wrong address. Wrong person. But when I opened it and saw their names, my hands went cold. My parents. The same people who threw me out at 16. The same people who vanished for 22 years. They were suing me. Money. Financial support. Compensation for hardship. Claims that they had sacrificed everything. I laughed. Not because it was funny. But because it was unbelievable. They hadn't paid for my pregnancy. My childbirth. My education. My rent. My food. My childcare. They hadn't even paid for a birthday card. And now they wanted what I built. That night, I couldn't sleep. Old memories surfaced like ghosts. Being 16, standing at the door, trash bags in my hands. For a moment, the old fear whispered. What if they take everything? What if you lose? But then another voice answered. A stronger one. You survived without them. You will face them without fear. I sat my daughter down. She was 22 now. An adult. Strong. Grounded. They're suing me, I said calmly. Her eyes widened. After everything. I nodded. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Mom, whatever happens, you already won. And she was right. I hired a lawyer. I gathered documents. School records. Work history. Proof of abandonment. Every paper told a story they hoped would stay buried. I didn't prepare with anger. I prepared with truth. The courtroom was cold. When my parents walked in, they looked smaller. Older. Weaker. They spoke first. They talked about shame. About disappointment. About how my pregnancy ruined their lives. I didn't interrupt. I let them talk. Because lies collapse when they stand too long. Not because time punished them. But because power had left them. My mother avoided my eyes. My father looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman I'd become. Maybe he didn't. I stood. My voice didn't shake. I was 16, I said. I was in 11th grade. I was pregnant. And I was abandoned. The room went silent. I saw it. That moment when understanding replaces neutrality. I wasn't asking for sympathy. I was stating facts. And facts don't need emotion to be powerful. I told them everything. The nights on couches. The jobs. The hunger. The tears. Not dramatically. Just truthfully. The judge asked one simple question. Did you provide financial or emotional support after you removed your minor child from your home? Silence. No answer. Because there was none. That was the moment the case began to fall apart. Not because I attacked them. But because the truth finally stood in a room where it couldn't be ignored. The courtroom was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence. The heavy kind. The kind where every breath feels loud. Where truth waits to land. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, back straight, heart steady. Not because I wasn't afraid. But because I had already survived worse than this room. That surprised me. Not at my parents. Not at the lawyers. At me. As if she wanted to understand the person behind the paperwork. Ms. Carter, she said calmly. You were a minor when you were removed from your home. Yes, Your Honor. You were in school, yes. And you were pregnant, yes. The judge nodded slowly and looked down at her notes. Then she asked the question that changed everything. To the plaintiffs, she said, turning to my parents. What support did you provide to your daughter after she was removed from your home? My mother shifted in her seat. My father cleared his throat. No one spoke. The silence stretched. It wasn't dramatic. It was damning. You are asking this court for financial support, the judge continued. From a woman you removed from your care while she was a minor. Without evidence of continued support. She paused. That is highly unusual. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, relief. We were embarrassed, he said suddenly. We did what we thought was right. The judge raised her hand gently. Embarrassment, she said evenly, is not a legal justification for abandonment. That word, abandonment, it echoed, because for the first time in my life, someone with authority named what happened to me. The judge adjusted her glasses. This case is dismissed, she said clearly. With prejudice. Meaning, it was over, permanently. No appeal, no second attempt. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just breathed, deeply, fully, for what felt like the first time in decades. My parents didn't look at me as the judge spoke. They stared at the table. Not angry, not loud, small. They hadn't lost money, they had lost the last illusion of control. As I stood to leave, my mother whispered my name. I stopped, not because I owed her, but because I no longer feared her. I hope you're happy, she said quietly. I looked at her, not with hatred, not with pride, just truth. I am, I said. And I earned it. Then I walked out. The sun felt warmer than it should have. My daughter was waiting for me on the steps. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me, tightly, longer than usual, and in that moment, everything made sense. The victory wasn't the lawsuit ending. It was standing in front of the people who abandoned me, and realizing they no longer had power over my heartbeat. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their regret. I had my life. I had my child. I had my peace. For a long time, I thought my story began the night I was kicked out. But I was wrong. That night didn't begin my story. It revealed my strength. My parents thought they took everything from me. My home, my education, my reputation, my future. But there was one thing they couldn't take. My will to survive, and survival became purpose. I raised my daughter without fear, without ultimatums, without shame. I taught her that mistakes don't erase love, that motherhood is not a failure, that dignity doesn't come from approval. And she grew up knowing something I never did at her age. She was safe. My life didn't look perfect, but it was honest. Every achievement was earned, every dollar accounted for, every moment of peace protected. No shortcuts, no handouts, just consistency. Family is not who shares your blood. Family is who stays when life gets inconvenient. And sometimes, the people who leave you first become the reason you learn to stand alone. After the lawsuit, I slept differently. Not lighter, deeper, because the past no longer whispered threats. It had nothing left to take. If you were rejected when you needed love the most. If your mistake became a life sentence. If you were forced to grow up too fast. Hear this. Your worst moment does not define your ending. You can be abandoned and still become unstoppable. You can be judged and still rise with dignity. You can be broken and still build something beautiful. I wasn't saved. I built myself. And now, my daughter knows. Strength is inherited not through blood, but through example. They kicked me out in 11th grade. Pregnant, afraid, alone. 22 years later, they tried to take from me again, but they failed. Because you can't take from someone who already learned how to survive without you. And that is my legacy. They kicked me out in 11th grade. Pregnant, afraid, alone. 22 years later, they tried to take from me again. But they failed. Because you can't take from someone who already learned how to survive without you. And that is my legacy.